Good evening, everybody. Matt Geary here for the Geek Pridecast on this Sunday evening. Sorry, I lie. We're not on Sunday anymore. We're on Monday. We're on this Monday evening. With me tonight, as always, we have my co-host Peter Ray Allison.
Good evening, everyone.
And our special guest tonight, Jonathan Green.
Hello.
Audio working. We're good.
Yes.
We're zooming it today. We're not Skyping it. We're zooming it today. Okay, so Jonathan, who are you? What do you do? What's your thing?
So my name's Jonathan Green, and I'm an author, editor, and games designer. And I'm probably best known for my contribution to fighting fantasy game books, and then my own game books I've written since. Well, I've also done various tie-in work for Games Workshop through Black Library, and also IP such as Doctor Who, Star Wars, Sonic the Hedgehog, all sorts of things.
No way.
That is a diverse list.
That really is. That's literally from one end to the other.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't know where to start with that.
Okay, I wonder, how did you go from Warhammer and fighting fantasy to Sonic the Hedgehog?
Basically, I started out writing for fighting fantasy, and my editor was at the time Mark Gascoigne. He is now the publisher at Aconite Books and has been the publisher at Black Library. And because of that, I then, through Mark, got a meeting with Jervis Johnson, which is how I ended up working for Games Workshop, doing colour text for their army books. So things like, I'm trying to think, was it second edition? I'm not sure now, but the Codex Chaos, I did stuff for that. Tyranids, Epic 40K, the Wood Elf Army book. Dark Elves, I think, was the first project I worked on, actually, back in 1994, 95.
Wow.
So then through that, because actually they went back to Mark, and Mark had done some work on the Sonic IP with some other people. And Puffin they were publishing a series of game books, and I don't know why, but various other people had written them, including James Wallace. And then it was over to Mark, and Mark asked if I'd co-write them with him, so he did too. So there you go. Okay. In a nutshell, it was Mark Gascoigne.
Mark Gascoigne knowing everyone within the publishing industry.
Yes.
I'm trying to think, because I'm sort of kind of looking. So I'm looking through all the fighting fantasy books and stuff, and I had a couple of them when I was growing up, and I'm just trying to see which one.
They're a staple for a certain demographic of games.
Yes, they were the gateway drug for many to get into role playing.
Yeah, that was very fair.
Yeah, mine were late in the day for the Puffin run. So they're in the 50s. So a lot of people, that they weren't massive print runs, and I don't think they were reprinted, or certainly the later ones weren't. So they're quite hard to get hold of. So many people, certainly my age, probably the majority had stopped reading the series by the time I was being published.
Oh, right.
But certainly then I did stuff when Wizard Books brought it back. I wrote new stories for them, new adventures for them again. So there's then another generation who are like in their 30s now, who know my stuff. And then there's yet another generation coming up through, but they haven't got around to republishing my books yet.
Oh, right. Okay.
Although, unless you're in France, because there's a new edition of my Pirates game book, Blood Bones. I've forgotten the title in French, but they're just releasing a new one with a brand new cover, which looks quite cool.
Le Pirates.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me, actually. I remember they're still releasing new fighting fantasy books, if I recall. I mean, I think a few years ago, Sir Ian Livingstone now,
yes,
released, was it Blood of the Zombies? Blood
of the Zombies. When you say that was actually 10 years ago, because that was the 30th anniversary adventure. So since then, he's published The Port of Peril, Assassins of Alancia, and then he's got a new one coming out this autumn to mark the 40th anniversary. So his book is Shadow of the Giants, and Steve Jackson's also written one.
Oh, nice.
So that's Secrets of, well, I call it Salamonis, but Steve and Ian both call it Salamonis. I'm not quite sure on the pronunciation because it's King Salomon. So I say they're probably right. They're probably right. They created it. They're right.
Sir Ian was at Games at UK Games Expo 3 years ago.
He was last year. Yeah, when it came back after the gap, he was actually there last year. So he was there in 2019.
Yeah, that's when we interviewed him.
Yeah.
Then he was there 2021, but he wasn't able to make it this year.
Yeah. I mean, I remember chatting to Sir Ian in 2019, and like when he'd just been got a commander of the got when a CB got a CBE. And I said, so are you going to level up and become a sir? And he said, well, I'd like to, but it's unlikely. And
it's a major quest.
Next time I'm going to say, called it. I called it.
Yes. I think for a while after I got the CBE, a lot of people just started calling him Surrey and Livingstone anyway.
Just on general principles.
They were prophets, obviously.
I mean, well, to be he is like, no, if it wasn't for Sir Ian or Steve Jackson, well, then probably the UK games industry would be very different.
Well, yes, because obviously they founded Games Workshop along with John Peake, and they were the ones responsible for introducing Dungeons and Dragons to the UK and to Europe. And they've had a hand in all sorts of classic games like Hero Quest, Talisman.
I love Talisman.
All kinds of things went
Tomb Raider.
Hands. Well. Yes, well, yeah, obviously then with computer games since, because Ian was with IDOS, well, Domark to begin with, but IDOS, so Tomb Raider, Thief, various others. Steve was at Lionhead Studios, so things like the Fable series, that was all part of the same company. Yeah, and they also did things like card games, and Steve did his phone adventures.
I can't remember seeing the adverts on them, but I never did them because I just thought that sounds really expensive.
I'm not sure how long the actual adventures lasted, so it maybe wasn't as. But I have to say, I didn't do it either. Asked the Bill Pear's permission. I think my parents at that point thought the game books is one thing, but that's a step too far.
I wonder if I've still got it or not, or if I've deleted it. But there was a fighting fantasy game on.
There is the app.
And it's the guy. I can't remember the name of it. He's in Sherlock. He's Sherlock Holmes. He plays. He's in loads of things. Oh God, I'm just gonna have to find what he's called.
Well, if it is Sherlock Holmes, that won't be fighting fantasy. But
no.
It's
not. No. The actor, the guy who narrates it, was from Sherlock Holmes. Bear with me 1 minute. I'm trying to find who.
That's not the app.
It's not an app. It's basically like a It's basically an app where you do a fighting fantasy thing. So it's the same. I'm gonna have to find it.
Because there is a video one of Death Trap Dungeon with Eddie Marston reading it.
Yes, that's it. That's it.
Yeah. Hollywood favourite for playing everything from Russian scientists in Hobbs and Shaw movies.
Eddie Marston. That's the fella.
Recently. Yeah, well, he was on TV recently about the boat, the thief, his wife. And the canoe, or whatever it was. That was.
Oh yeah. But the canoe, so he just randomly went off, and his wife claimed, life insurance.
Yeah,
that was it. But I mean, anyway, enough about Ian. How did you get involved in fighting fantasy?
So I was the perfect demographic when the first book was released 40 years ago, The Wall of Fartop Mountain. I was still 10 years old, not quite 11. And I think I'd been taken into town, into Bath, where I lived nearby at the time, to buy school shoes or clothes or something. And my mum at the end said, no, we can go to Waterstones. And I remember going in, and it was on one of the table displays, and it just looked like nothing I'd seen before, because you didn't normally have the text of the book in the middle of the cover. It was at the top of the cover. And I picked it up and saw Russ Nicholson's gruesome illustrations, and the rest, as they say, is history. But from reading them, I loved them. I think at one point my parents thought, you should probably, dare I say it, grow out of this now. And my gran certainly said, when do you think you'll grow out of monsters? And I'm 50 now, so I think that answers that question. But then I started trying to write my own. And then again, from about the age of 12, real pastiches, most things never finished, maybe no longer than 30 paragraphs. And I drew them as much as I wrote them. But I kept going, and eventually the drawings dropped away and I just did writing. And when I left school, I actually wrote to Puffin Books saying, how do you go about contributing a game book? And I got a letter back from Mark Gascoigne explaining the process of submitting a pitch. And I gave it a go. And he was very kind and wrote lots of constructive comments, but it wasn't good enough. Then I had another go at it. So I think this is during my first year at university. So when I finished my A-levels, I did my first attempt at an adventure. I think I rewrote it at Christmas, and it still wasn't getting any better. So I just junked that. And then I tried something completely different, but kind of pillaged some of the better bits from the original idea. And at that point, Mark came back saying, it's still not there yet. This is much better. Then it passed muster with him. So he then sent it to Penguin Books. They wanted some more changes. And eventually, at the start of the summer holidays after my second year at uni, I got my first commission. And that was 30 years ago.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Wow. Well, you would have got your, to be honest, because I think my first fighting fantasy book was Master of Chaos.
Number 41.
Yeah. So yeah, in 1990, so sort of in and around the time you were just about sort of kind of coming on board, I guess. But yeah, I remember sort of seeing that, because we used to have, in primary school, used to have this sort of kind of like, there was like this book club that used to come in, and you could get sort of, you go in and you sort of kind of look at books and things like that. And I always kind of went for the ones that you could get like free stuff with, or, look cool. And I just saw this one with like a dragon, sort of two-headed dragon thing in front of it. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to have that and stuff. And I sort of kind of got it. And then I didn't realize what it was when I first started when I got it. So I sort of picked it up, and I was really confused, because I was like, wait a minute, so I have to turn pages to go to different things? And then it all clicked, and I was like, wow, this is brilliant. Ended up dying a lot, but
no, I think like everything else, you always remember your first time. And for me, it was Port. Oh, City of Thieves, not Port. City of Thieves.
Yes, Port Black Sand.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was thinking. Port Black Sand. Yes, yeah. The City of Thieves are fantastic. I still got it upstairs.
Yeah,
very battered, and but yeah, it's a great book. It's such a great story, and like my daughter is now coding in a computer science class, a text adventure game. So gave her the Fighting Fantasy book. So, okay, you want text ideas for text adventure game? Here you go. Have a read of this. And she had an absolute blast. But yeah, I mean, one thing as well is, with ebooks and apps on phones, Fighting Fantasy seems to kind of undergoing a renaissance right now, because it's a different medium, but still quite almost designed for Fighting Fantasy in a way.
Yeah, and also Scholastic Books now have the license to publish the paperbacks in a new format, but Tin Man Games are publishing kind of the original edition with the original artwork and things, some recolored, through their Fighting Fantasy Classics app, and they're adding new titles all the time. I think the most recent one was Freeway Fighter, kind of Mad Max adventure, which actually starts in, I think the Plague hits in 2022 in July, so not far off now.
Yeah, and I mean, I must be Freeway Fighter is one of my favorites, because cars and guns and dark feature. But also, I mean, another one of my favorites was Robot Commando.
Yes,
because
robots and dinosaurs.
Mechs and dinosaurs. Yes, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, that definitely came into my thinking when I was writing my most recent Ace game book, which is Ronin 47, which has got mechs versus kaiju, because I did think Robot Commando was always popular.
I saw the artwork when we were at your booth. It was so nice. It was beautiful. Yeah. So nice. Like, Pete was flicking through it, and I was like, it's absolutely amazing. So good.
Yeah. Yeah, Neil Gooch has done a brilliant job, and Leno Grady on colours as well. So yeah, the hardback is full colour.
Also, like the scaling of it, like when you're looking at the artwork, you get a great sense of scale. This is just like you always got something in the picture to kind of give it a demonstration of the comparative sizes of the objects. And
Neil was very good at that. So I sort of described one of them crashing through the wall of the base, and he added a few engineers running away. And again, it makes such a difference to the actual effect of that image.
Yeah, I mean, and when you kind of look at it, you don't really see the engineers at first, because you're just focused on that, the robot crashing through the wall. But even so, even though you don't cognitively realize you can see the engineers, you just see that, get that sense of scale. That so it's
if they weren't there, it would be the same. Not the same.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, also one thing about Ronin 47 is that it's unlike Robot Commando, where you could go from mech to mech to mech. You kind of focus on one mech, aren't you?
Yeah, I did wonder about giving that as an option, but part of the point is that the Ronin 47 of the adventure is your mech, because it starts off their samurai mech, so that's how they're classified, and then it's based loosely on the legend of the 47 Ronin. So when this act of betrayal happens and your master's killed, you become it's a Ronin, so hence Ronin 47. So rather than having the option of changing mechs, I made it you can customize your mech quite heavily before you even start the adventure. You can decide, because you have different stats are paired off. So you got, get it right now. So suddenly gone blank. I think it's speed. Oh, I'm trying to think. Anyway, there's the melee and the armor, I think, paired off against each other. So the more heavily armored it is, that's it. The speed and the armor. So the more lightly armored it is, that the quicker it can move, and vice versa. And then you've got its melee abilities and its artillery abilities, and they're paired off. So you can have it right down the middle. So it's a real kind of everyman, a robot, or you can tailor it one way or the other. And then there's different add-ons you can collect during the adventure. So different upgrades, which you can add to your mech, which will affect their different stats in different ways as well.
Yeah, I mean, the fighting fantasy system is, at its core, very simple. It's strength, stamina, luck.
Yeah,
but its simplicity means it's so flexible.
Yes, I mean, when I was writing fighting fantasy books, I would try and play with that idea, and often I'd add a different stat somewhere in there. But there is actually quite a lot you can do with just those three. And I remember things like, I think it's in Death Trap Dungeon, where Ian Livingstone had that you come across a fountain which you can drink from, and a witch cast a spell over it. So it means that it's healing, but you also lose luck points at the same time. So little quirks like that make it quite fun.
Yeah, I found when reading like the multitude variety of fighting fantasy book, Ian Livingstone would kind of always went into the lore of the world. He was very focused on Port Blacksand and its realm, whilst Steve, blanking his name again.
Steve Jackson.
Thank you, Steve Jackson. I apologize. Steve Jackson would all kind of look at try new things with the rules. I mean, like he brought in the sanity mechanics in House of Hell.
Also, Steve wasn't really interested in repeating what he'd done before. He always wanted to do something new. So hence, he did obviously co-wrote Warlock of Far Top Mountain with Ian. And then he did his first solo one, which is your classic fantasy castle adventure, Citadel of Chaos. But then for number 4, he went into space. He did the first science fiction on Starship Traveller. Then I'm trying to think, I think the next one of his was House of Hell, which is your classic horror film set in the real world. So yeah, he was always doing something different. And then he did Appointment with Fear, which was superheroes, and Creature of Havoc, where you are the monster for the first time. And then he did the Sorcery Epic, where they all linked together over 4 books with the complicated magic system.
Yeah, I remember Creature of Havoc was that you played the monster, but also there's one neat little mechanic, which was if you rolled 2 dice of the same value, like 2 1s or 2 2s, you instantly killed the person you were killing.
Yeah, because you're such a massive monster, and you've got it never describes what you look like. You see odd things in some of the illustrations. There's hulking shadows, which is you, and it mentions about tough scales on your feet, or being hairy, or sharp claws, or all the rest of it. But it's a cool concept.
So you had Ronin 47 was on Kickstarter last year, was it? I'm just looking at the Kickstarter.
That's right, yes. I think it's probably about a year ago, because I was hoping to deliver the books this month, but it's not quite gone to print. It's ready. It's getting quotes from printers and things, which is a bit tricky at the moment, because obviously all the prices have gone up since I ran the Kickstarter.
I've heard that, like paper prices and stuff are sort of kind of going up. When we had
massively
Nightfall games on, they were talking about sort of paper prices and things like that. What have you found sort of with the Kickstarter? Because we've talked to a lot of people, especially when we were at UK Games Expo, all the different experiences with Kickstarter, some good, some bad, some tragic. How did you find it?
Yeah, a steep learning curve. I mean, to begin with, the very first one I launched was to write a history of fighting fantasy game books. You Are the Hero.
Yes, I remember that brilliant book.
I pitched it to the publisher at the time, and I pitched various ideas for the 30th anniversary, and each one they'd say no, and then every other idea I came back with, they said, your ideas get more expensive all the time. So the idea of a coffee table book, they just said was too expensive to do, and I could understand it because it's a very niche market. But then a friend of mine who's also in publishing said, have you heard of Kickstarter? And I don't think I had at that point, but it was only in the States, and it was coming to the UK in October 2012. And one of the first projects that I was aware of launching on it was Turn to 400, which was a documentary film about fighting fantasy.
Yes.
And unfortunately, it didn't make its funding. I think they wanted to get £40,000. They raised about 15. At which point I thought, there are people out there, there's £15,000 worth of funding, which they didn't spend on the film. And there are people who might be interested in this. So I pitched the idea of the book. But the trap I fell into with that one was where as soon as you kind of hit another £1,000, you offer another stretch goal, and it just becomes more and more to deliver. And the other problem I found was I thought I knew a lot about fighting fantasy until I really started to research it. It didn't matter that I'd written for the adventures. There was so much I didn't know. And I'd interview somebody and they'd say, oh, have you spoken to so-and-so? So I'd go off down that rabbit hole. And as a result, the book tripled in size from what it was meant to be. And it was about 9 months late, which really in the scheme of things, a Kickstarter doesn't sound too
nothing.
bad.
It's nothing. I've had ones that are 4 years late.
But people were getting a bit miffed. But the good thing was once the book came out, they liked the books. They forgot about the Kickstarter running late and they just liked the final product. And also they backed to, I think they paid £25 for a hardback, which was then on sale for 40 quid. So, I mean, no, it was a win-win.
Yeah.
It is a fantastic, I remember the Edgelit. About 8 years ago, I got you gave me a copy, and after I did that article for the BBC about fighting fantasy.
Oh yes, that's brilliant. Yes.
And yeah, because I was talking to you about that, and yeah, it's a beautiful book, fantastic book, and you kind of like have a breakdown of the entire history as well, like in annotations about every of the fighting fantasy book to date.
Yeah,
it's a massive book, but really, really so good.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
so we were talking about Kickstarter, weren't we? We got back on fighting fantasy. So after that, I'm a bit. I do forget things, I'm afraid. But the next one I did was the first of my own Ace Game books, which wasn't a thing at the time. They weren't called Ace Game books at all. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to do an interactive retelling of Alice in Wonderland, and I thought I'd try crowdfunding it. And I wanted to do something similar to fighting fantasy, but not the same. And I'd done some other adaptations of Alice. I was influenced by it in some short stories I wrote, particularly one for my steampunk setting of Pax Britannia for Bowden Books. I wrote a short story called White Rabbit. And from that, I thought, again, this is something I think I could do something fun with. So I went off and did that. And again, I was lucky in that funded. But then I have had projects which haven't funded. But generally, I've found I've tried all sorts of different things. Like I did for one of them, The Wicked Wizard of Oz. If you back the Kickstarter, you got these bonus characters in the book, which I thought, that's a nice idea. That's a nice way of rewarding people who've backed the Kickstarter. But of course, if you then buy the book later, having never heard about the Kickstarter, you find there's 2 characters you can't access, that doesn't go down very well either.
Yeah.
So it's always that tricky balance of giving people a reason to back the Kickstarter, because without that, you couldn't produce a product. But then equally, you've got to make it fair to those people who buy it, possibly later on. So I've always tried to offer some sort of little add-on, some sort of download or little gifts and things. And I'm trying to simplify that because, again, with the whole add-on structure, it makes it a little tricky to deliver because I don't use fulfillment houses. I do it all myself. So it can become a bit of a logistical headache.
Wait, so everything comes to your house then?
Yes.
Wow.
So that's one of the downsides. And I think, I can't do it like this again. But and the endless trips to the post office and printing out the labels and all the rest of it, and people getting grumpy in the queue behind you. But then it's still, for me, the best way to crowdfund or to fund books at all.
So part of you doesn't want to be too successful because your house won't be able to take it.
Yes. Although I have now started doing RPGs, which are delivered through drive-through RPG.
Right. Yeah.
So with that, I try and make sure that I give people effectively free content, which then will then go on sale to the people later. But for backing the Kickstarter in the first place. So I've done one of those which delivered. The other one has been delayed. It's Hair Rot, but this year it will be out.
What do your family think of the piles of Kickstarter copies ready to be shipped out?
Well, my wife takes a deep breath and encourages me to keep going. Yes,
that's lovely.
I always have when they deliver the pallet of boxes to the garage, and it's like the kids' bikes get shoved to the back and things, and then it really is a case of trying to do it as quickly as possible, so that partly the backers get their rewards nice and quickly, but also so that it's not cluttering up the place, because we live in a flat, so between the garage and the flat, it does take over.
Have you seen that?
Up in all Wednesdays.
Have you seen that now? The post office are offering parcel delivery collected from your door.
Yes, I have. Yes.
So I was wondering, it's like, instead of you have to kind of take all of it to the post office, have them come to you.
Well, I do that when I'm selling games and things like that, sort of stuff. You know, as you can see, the mess behind me, and sort of like if I'm selling a load of sort of games and things like that, as I am now, I sort of, if there's too many to go, I just get DPD or somebody to rock up to my door and then get them to ship it off, so I don't have to sort of kind of go down to the post office.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier. I'm loving. I'm going through this Kickstarter, this whole, and it's just the artwork's just so phenomenal. I love it. Just based on the artwork itself, it's just so nice.
So, how successful was the Kickstarter for Ronin 47?
I'm trying to think now. It raised more than its target. It raised its target in a satisfying amount of time. I'm trying to think. It was about 11,000 and something, was it?
12,000. You just got just under 12,000 pledged.
Yeah,
nice.
289 backers.
Yeah. So it wasn't the biggest of the game books I've done was Dracula: Curse of the Vampire, with the t-shirts and product placement. Because obviously the way it's become is, it started off with Alice because I thought that'd be a fun thing to do, and then people said, "What are you going to do next? Are you going to do Through the Looking Glass?" And I thought, well, no spoilers ahead, but if you read Alice's Nightmare in Wonderland, the first one, you'll realize that Through the Looking Glass and various other things are all included in that book. So kind of that was Alice done, tick. So then I thought, what else could you do? And I thought about Alan Moore's Lost Girls, and that had Alice, Dorothy Gale, and Wendy Darling. Obviously, if anybody knows about the content of Lost Girls, my game books are nothing like that. But I did think it was kind of a quasi trilogy of classic children's stories. So I then did Wicked Wizard of Oz next, but where Alice is a bit steampunk, that was more diesel punk. And then I did Neverland, Here Be Monsters, because I'm not a fan of Peter Pan, but everything's better with dinosaurs. So I merged it with Conan Doyle's The Lost World. And I probably enjoyed writing that one the most of all of those three, and was most sort of pleased with the results. So it's pirates versus dinosaurs versus the end of the world. And I'm now distracted. So obviously it depended how popular the source material was. And having done that, I thought, what else could I do? And years ago, I wanted to do a Beowulf game book, so it made sense to do that next. And there was certainly a demographic. It's been interesting because there are people who've bought the books who've never read game books before, and they bought them because they are Alice or Oz or Neverland. And there are possibly some of my original readers from Fighting Fantasy who've been put off the other ones because they consider it to be twee and childish. But as soon as you read the books, you know they're not like that, because that's not what I want to read. But I've then kind of gone with the more adult, darker stories. So I've done Beowulf. I did then I did 'Twas the Krampus Night Before Christmas, which again sounds twee and childish, but it isn't. There was a great review which described it as a mixture of camp characters, humor, and genuine moments of horror.
That's just British horror for you. You always get sort of like one of my favorite British horror films is Dog Soldiers and stuff, and it's funny, but it's terrifying as well. It just sort of, it's a good sort of mix.
Yeah. So, and then I did Dracula: Curse of the Vampire. I wrote that during lockdown. It was the largest game book I've written to date, with 1,000 sections and about 170,000 words, something, I think, in total. So it's a beast.
Yeah,
as you can see.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean the average game book, like Final Fantasy, was about 400 sections.
400 sections, yeah, and they kind of range between 30 to 40,000 words. The ones I wrote very quickly got longer and were close to 50,000, but you could get at least 3 Fighting Fantasy game books out of that. So more for me.
So why do you? 2 questions. How come yours was 1,000 sections long, and why was Fighting Fantasy almost set to a strict 400 sections?
The 400 was pure chance. Apparently, when they got to the end, it was 399. So they wanted to round it up. So I can't remember now if it was they either added the final page where you turn to and you see the Warlock's treasure, or they added another section which effectively just says turn to something else in it. And it wasn't ever meant to be the standard. And there are books which don't follow it. Freeway Fighter's shorter, Creature of Havoc's longer. I wrote one called Night of the Necromancer, and that's longer, as was Charlie Higson's Gates of Death. I'm trying to think now if Rhianna Pratchett's was longer. I think it might have been. And things like the sorcery books, they weren't all the same length either, and they varied massively. And I think each one got longer than the one before. And Crown of Kings was 800 sections. But one of the things I do with the Ace game books is that because they're based on existing properties, you can play as different characters from the story. So in this one, I knew I wanted to do, you could be Jonathan Harker or Mina Murray or Dr. Seward. And then I thought I got into practice. It started actually with The Wicked Wizard of Oz, but was better done in Neverland, where you can play as the baddie. So in Wicked Wizard of Oz, although technically you're not the baddie, you can play as the Wicked Witch. And she's not misunderstood. She is a Wicked Witch. And in Neverland, you can play as Captain Hook, who is as ruthless as a pirate captain would need to be. So in this one, you can play as Dracula. So if you play as any of the vampire hunters, you can swap your character throughout the book to try and defeat the Count. And if you're Dracula himself, you have to work to stop the vampire hunters, but your story starts in the 15th century before you're a vampire. So I always knew I wanted to do that. And it's just in the writing, I thought it'd be about 800 sections, but just writing the vampire hunters had taken me that far. So then there are 200 unique sections for Dracula's adventure.
Wow, okay, that sounds massively complicated. I mean, how did you kind of keep track of like that's
the one thing. How do you, because it's not like a normal book where you have, because you're going to be jumping back and forth a lot and there's going to be different things. How do you comprehend that? How do you sort of keep yourself
map it out?
Yeah, how do you map it out?
Yeah, I know people always ask me, what software do you use? And the answer is I use Word, and that's it. It's all old school. I do it all by hand. So there's lots of flowcharts.
All right.
So I start by breaking it down. Dracula took a long time to break down because I did base it on the structure of the original novel. It's probably the one that's closest to the original, but there are additional bits. So if you know the story, there'll still be surprises. And there's references to other horror films and Hammer horror films and things, and other classic works of Gothic literature. And I added things like Dracula's Guest is the short story published posthumously, which many people think was the excised opening chapter of Dracula. So that's in there. I restored the original ending to the book as well. So I start by doing the very basic breakdown of the plot. And because of that, because it's an epistolary novel, you've effectively got, most of the time, it's 3 strands running through it, which is Harker, Mina, and Seward. Although you do get other bits like telegrams and newspaper reports and things like that. But so I have an overview generally of how the plot's going to break down, and then I take the individual scenes within that and break them down again. So I have lots and lots of pages of hand-drawn flowcharts. So having written the adventure, I don't write it muddled up either. I write it in order. So section 1 will go to 2 and 3 and so on, because when I have a very specific process breaking it up. So I try to make sure that the illustrations are evenly placed throughout the book. So to do that, I do it all at the end when I assign numbers. You'll have some sections which are the answers to puzzles or converting words into codes. So again, you need to have particular paragraphs reserved for that. With the Ace game books, different characters have different icons. So when you come to a section which has your icon, you know you have to deduct or add a certain number to turn to a unique section for you. So if you're Mina in one bit, if you're reading as Harker or Seward, they'll have the same section, but then you'll have Mina's icon, which is, I think is the bat, get that right? And if you turn to that one, you get a different bit of information. So again, that all has to be accounted for. And then also with something this big, I don't really like I think it's awkward, people turning backwards and forwards massively, especially if they've got their finger stuck in the 5-finger bookmark. So I try and make sure that most turn tos are actually quite close to each other.
All right,
so there's all sorts of factors that which is, I just make it harder for myself, basically. And again, when it comes to renumbering, I print out sheets of numbers and I do it all by hand. And then I cut and paste to change the numbers in the manuscript.
So
There's probably people tearing their hair out now. But
yeah, it sounds so much more complicated.
No twine, no software, just, yeah.
One thing I want to ask is, like, this sounds like having 1,000 sections means that you can accommodate the different plot strands for each character.
Yes.
So approximately how many sections is it per character in terms of completion?
You're going to ask me how many you actually. That
Rough,
I can't
approximately.
remember because I did write them sort of synchronously. So I did
Yeah.
Parker's opening scenes, then I'd moved to the bit in Whitby, then I'd moved to another, and Seward in the asylum, and so on and backwards and forwards. So I was kind of in my own head. It was still moving forward chronologically. It was only Dracula who I didn't write anything until I got right to the end.
Yeah.
So then I made sure that when you are Dracula, if there are scenes which have him in the book, you still encounter those scenes, but from your point of view. So I don't know exactly. I think it worked out pretty evenly. Probably Mina has a slightly shorter story. And if you're going to ask me how many of the sections you'd actually read in a playthrough, I've got no idea.
Okay. How did, obviously, it sounds like these days game books are based purely on like the existing IP that is now in public domain. Now,
they are currently, yes, because it's becoming a thing which I'm known for, and most people seem to like. There are some people who don't, and I can understand both points of view, but economics come into it as well. So selling a known brand, particularly because although it's a series, every book is a standalone adventure. It's not like Lone Wolf where you're carrying on, one story over many adventures, or Fighting Fantasy where it's all one world and you might encounter different characters or same characters in different books. These are all unique. So the fact that the thing which ties them all together is they're based on existing IP is people now kind of got used to that idea. So they ask me at events like Expo, well, what are you doing next? And I'm always very tempted to say this, that, and the other, because I've got so many ideas and how I do my take. But because it takes me, on average, I write one a year, I keep my cards quite close to my chest.
That's quite prolific.
But yes, I mean, some of them are more original than others. So Twas is very loosely based on a visit from St. Nicholas, the poem, when 'twas the night before Christmas and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. That's the very loose premise. And then there's lots of other Christmas legends and folklore. So, but the story is effectively mine. And again, Ronin 47, the legend of the 47 gives a very vague outline to the story, but most of it, like the whole reason why it's set in the future and it's post-apocalypse and all sorts of things. So that's all me. And again, one of the ones I keep telling people is going to be the next one. At the moment, I'm not quite sure, but I want to do a weird Western, which would have characters from Mark Twain books, but wouldn't be based particularly on any Mark Twain story, and would be effectively original plot, just featuring Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn and
sounds
others.
a bit like Leave Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yes, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that would be more, a good example, because it's borrowing those characters and putting them in my own story.
And
but partly it means by doing that, I can stick to the rules that it's still an existing IP. It's not just completely out there and original.
Yeah, because Ronin 47 sounds like one with like the loosest possible interpretation of the original IP. Because I don't think Mex and Keiji were in the original text.
No, not in the way. Although I did have fun because all of the kaiju are named after various yokai and mythological creatures from Japanese folklore.
Nice.
So, yeah.
What sort of eras sort of kind of do you favor, or do you have sort of, is the sort of kind of I suppose a lot of it is sort of the older sort of steampunk type, or the fantasy side. Is that your sort of kind of your thing, or do you prefer?
It's a real mix, to be honest. It's the idea at the time which excites me the most. So I could tell you, I don't want to give the ideas away though, but there's all sorts of genres which I've got ideas for, and I want to touch on how I'd retell particular properties in that way. So, while I'm doing the weird Western one, that'll be what's getting me excited. Then I'll be doing possibly another 19th century one. I suppose, Victorian Gothic literature is something I'm quite fond of, have a soft spot for, and been influenced by.
Have you ever done any of the Cthulhu mythos stuff, or?
Well, that's again, I've got a pitch in with somebody, but I can't say more about that.
Okay.
But definitely, but the annoying thing is I've got 3 different Cthulhu ideas based using different properties. So I think probably doing all 3 would be a bit just annoy people. But if one doesn't come off, I'll do one of the other ones.
And also the IP around, copyright issue around Lovecraft and Cthulhu is massively complicated.
Why's that?
Yeah, and it's rather vague as well. Generally, it's accepted that if Lovecraft came up with it, you're okay. It's all the others around it, and it's who invented what.
Yeah.
And certainly there are authors. I'm trying to think of an example now. The Bayaki, is it in the festival? I don't think they're called Bayaki in that story. I think it was August Derlath who did more about them. But effectively, it's kind of taken that Lovecraft created them and somebody else named them later. So yes, I've been very careful not to get too crazy. Or if you do make references, you can make it vague enough that nobody's going to sue you.
Yeah, because I mean, like Brian Lumley came along and created the Titus Crow and the whole Dreamlands series, and then you also got Chaosium with their Call of Cthulhu role-playing game and all the
so I steer well clear of that. It's things like with all of them, I go back to the source material. So with Dracula, for example, he's not a misunderstood romantic hero. He is a grave leech who will drain your life force to stay alive, and he's not in love with Mina. He drinks her blood out of spite because the others are trying to kill him, and that's how he is in my book. It's not Gary Oldman and Winona Ryder and Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah,
you wouldn't pitch sort of having worked for Black Library. You wouldn't sort of pitch a 40K sort of one of these.
I've written one that they did them about 10 years ago. They did 4 adventure game books, and I wrote 2 of them.
Oh, right. No,
so
I didn't know that.
They were only available as direct exclusive or sold at events. So very few people have got copies. And unfortunately, you'd go into shops and say to the manager, and they'd never even heard of them. So possibly the less said about that, the better. But one of them I wrote was a vampire one, and that was called Shadows over Sylvania. And I still think it's probably one of the best game books I've written. And when they stopped printing them, there was the opportunity to buy them print on demand. And I bought 10, and I gave them as rewards for the Alice Kickstarter. And I could have bought 100 and sold them for an absolute fortune there. So,
man.
One sold recently for, I think it was £280 on eBay. And it was £13 to buy brand new. Because they are so rare.
I had no idea. I had no idea. No. That's weird. Why you think sort of Games Workshop, the PR machine they would sort of,
license and market it out.
Yeah, but there you go.
I mean, Games Workshop's business is selling toy soldiers. Everything else is just an offshoot of that, or to sell toy soldiers. Now, there's only rule books and things, and
rule books are the toy games, pay toy soldiers.
Yeah, and again, the novels, it's hoping to inspire people to go into Games Workshop. When they're there, they'll pick up some more Space Marines. I think that at the time there was somebody there who championed them, and that's why they happened at all. But I mean, they don't need to worry about game books to make their business a success. I think they probably consider it a distraction.
Basically when everybody's got 3D printers and they can't sell toy soldiers anymore, then game books may be the future for them.
Who knows?
They'll just sell STL files.
I don't know. But...
Yeah, but I mean, I think one thing that was telling, especially UK Games Expo, was for years, Games Workshop never interacted. They never had a presence at the UK Games Expo, but now they have.
Well, they've gone through
they're one of the major sponsors,
Yeah, they've gone through a massive change up though, because you can see, I can't remember who left. The guy, I can't remember his name. They basically had.
Do you mean Tom Kirby?
Yeah, I think when he
change of CEO, is it Kevin Roundtree now?
Yeah. So basically, when the CEO changed, they basically started, because they got rid of all their social media. Like, I remember they got rid of all their social media. They got rid of, you couldn't talk to the press. They wouldn't talk to the press. They wouldn't do any, they were so sort of backward in a sort of very sort of social media savvy sort of kind of, or at least emerging community. They were completely not embracing it. And then he left. New fella comes in. Warhammer community, embracing social media, YouTube, Facebook, send out sort of samples to sort of YouTubers and stuff to sort of kind of review and stuff. And they started bringing back a load of the sort of kind of old school stuff, because they know that people my age and stuff growing up with Squats, with it just released and things like that, they're like, oh my god, we love these guys. And so they're kind of bringing back the nostalgia side of things, and they're being
they've also released games where you don't need to buy so many figures. So things like Kill Team,
Necromunda.
The fact they brought Necromunda back, and certainly Kill Team's really well supported. So obviously, things like Blackstone Fortress. So rather than just doing that, we've got a box of Warhammer and a box of 40k until we update it, and then we'll release these odd games like Battlefleet Gothic or Gorka Morka. There's much more variety and different levels of investing in it right from the start. I can't remember the different packs of Space Marines, but you've got like Commander or something, and it's just different scales of product.
Yeah, they've really they have diversified a lot, and the fact that they're sort of kind of like, I just hope they bring Epic back again. That's one of my sort of like, I just what they bring it. They've got Titanicus, they've got Aeronautica. They just need to put them together and add small toy soldiers and some tanks, and I'll have Epic again, and then I'll be happy. And Battlefleet Gothic. I don't understand why they haven't brought that back, especially with the advent of like X-Wing and stuff from Fantasy Flight. I just don't understand why I haven't brought back Battlefleet Gothic, because that was such a good game as well.
Well, I guess they've done Aeronautica Imperialis, haven't they?
Yeah.
Which is obviously not at the same level, but who knows?
Yeah.
They work so many years ahead. It's probably already in the pipeline somewhere. We just haven't heard about it.
Yeah, that's very true. That is very true. I remember like people just going, they're never going to bring the squats back, and I was like, they'd be fools if they didn't. They'd be fools. And then this,
you've had Zotes.
So. Yeah, they had Zotes. And
anything
stuff.
goes.
Yeah, pretty much. That like Zotes that's insane. So it's they're really sort of playing on this sort of nostalgia thing and stuff. And it's just like there's so much stuff they could bring back, and then people would love it. And if they brought back Epic, I just throw all my money away. I think I get rid of all my 40k and just go back to Epic and stuff. Loved that game. Loved it.
You mentioned you did some writing for the codexes. Was it? You said like color writing or something.
Yeah, color text. So
Sorry.
you wouldn't really call them short stories. Some of them, it's when you turned a page and there's a particular army type, and there'd be a little grey shaded box in the bottom corner, a couple of 100 words. And it was just to give an extra bit of detail or atmosphere. And then every once in a while you got like a double page spread. So I did one in the Wood Elves book about Durthu, the tree man, sort of awakening. There was kind of, I think I did, try to remember that, but with the Tyranids one, there was one of, I think it was Bill King's short stories, which is really good, where somebody finds a Tyranid gun and effectively tries to take them over, because it's obviously a living thing, trying to take over the Magos' mind. But then mine kind of elements of an ongoing battle with a world falling to the Tyranid. So it's got everything from effectively a Gene Stealer cults to a massive battle with Space Marines and things. So, but yeah, the idea was just to give some flavor. So I suppose one of the things that they say now in fiction is it shouldn't just be a battle report, but sometimes you were kind of writing a fictional battle report, but obviously you had to have whoever was in the codex, they were the ones who were winning.
Right, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Nobody's going to buy a codex if they're like, yeah, they're just losers.
Yeah.
So how does that work with the Imperial Guard? Because they're just cannon fodder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think probably with that, I didn't do the Imperial Guard one, but you probably focus on duty and honor and laying down your life for your brothers and being a brave hero and all the rest of it.
I sort of, they, because Games Workshop, Black Library, they had like they used to do a writer's challenge. I'm not sure if they've done it recently or not, but they used to have like a writer's challenge, and you'd have sort of like these sort of like certain things, focal points that you had, the sort of thing. And I was like, I'm just gonna write some fan fiction type thing, and it was based on like the Praetorian, the Praetorians, the Praetorians, and it was the Battle of, what was the one thing? It was kind of basically Rorke's Drift, but it was against
it was Orc's Drift. Orc's
Drift, yeah, the Orc's Drift, Orc's Drift, and it was basically about a guy who had, there was another one. There was two of them. So there was the big battle, which was meant to be Islandawana, where they got massacred, and then there was Orc's Drift, which was the one after. It was one where they got massacred, and it was basically a guy who survived, or his father survived it, and was basically a bit of pariah because he had survived, and it's not a very honorable thing to be sort of kind of one last over. And it was basically about his son. He was sort of a kind of Sharp-esque character who was he had sort of raised us up, and he was still getting a bit of shit from some of the local commanders and things like that. And he had a sort of kind of I can't remember the sort of kind of clan I'd give him, but he had an orc sort of scout. He was one of his mates and stuff, and I put a lot of effort into it, and then I was just like, this is going to take me forever, and I went, I'll just shelve this. And I think I got about 12 or 13 pages, and then I was just like, something more and stuff.
Yeah, I did a little bit of Imperial Guard with some of the novels I wrote for Games Workshop, but there were always a small group of them cut off from everybody else. So they could kind of, otherwise, like you said, if it was put on the scale of a massive battle, the big battles always had the Space Marines. because I did a couple of Armageddon books. So obviously it was everybody versus the orcs.
All right, so what's the one that I read? What's it? Emperor's Gift is the one that's got about the battle. It's got the Battle of Armageddon in it as well. And that's an awesome book.
Well, there's Aaron Dembski Bowden did. I'm trying to remember now what it was called, but yeah, he did an Armageddon novel.
I think it might be. I think it might be Emperor's Gift, and that was so good because it's basically it's got it's got Grey Knights versus the whole Grey Knights versus Space Wolves thing, which I thought was just mind blowing and stuff, where they actually came to blows. And it was after the Battle of Armageddon, where basically the Grey Knights were like, right, they've seen us, they can't survive and stuff. And the Grey Knights were all, no, the Space Wolves were like, but they helped us win the Battle of Armageddon. Yeah. And the Grey Knights were like, tough. And then we're going to sort of kill them all. And then it basically comes to a fight. And Bjorn the Fell-Handed comes out of his hyperstate and goes, shut up and wise up and sort of do your own thing. And I was just like, oh, it's so good. So good.
Yeah.
So I suppose you said you can't really sort of kind of say what's coming up, so I can't even say what
was the expected release for Ronin 47?
Yeah.
Sorry, I think the publishers put August. I'm hoping to get it to backers in July. It really depends how long it takes the printers to, like I say, we've got to once you've got some quotes that we're happy with and finalized it, it just really depends how long it takes it to print. So it'll be this summer. It won't be long. And obviously, there have been all sorts of delays.
Yeah, and will it be available for as an ebook or
yes,
through Amazon?
Yep. So there'll be a hyperlinked ebook, a paperback, and then a limited run of a hardback as well.
Ooh. And do you have any prices for what they might be?
I'm guessing, but I expect that the paperback will be £10 because that's what they are normally, or £9.99. Beyond that, I'm not sure at this stage, partly because of the whole printing costs and because the hardback's full colour. So
okay,
it's terrible. I can't remember what the ebooks sell for, but not much less than the paperback.
Yeah. Do you think the rising cost of paper will kind of make you less likely to kind of go through the paperback route in the future? The physical copies, anyway.
No, I'll have to look at my budgets and how I do it differently. But I think that the part of the reason that people back my things on Kickstarter is because they like the physical product.
Yeah.
They like having a nice, pretty thing.
Yeah.
And I'm the same. Once I used to only buy paperbacks, and then once I was working full time and had a decent wage, I started to buy hardbacks. And even though sometimes it's been tough, I'm terrible. I have a habit now where I'd much rather buy the hardback than paperback. But when I produce my own hardbacks, I want them to look really attractive on my shelf. So hopefully people are like having them on their shelves.
Yeah.
So certainly the hardbacks become a more collectible object.
Yeah.
And again, I think people like the tactile experience of holding a book.
Yeah, 100%. I've got an Audible sort of account, and I do listen to sort of kind of audiobooks and stuff, but I always buy the books. And it's like if I've got a chance where I've got time to sit there and read, I would prefer to have a physical sort of kind of book. Like my dad would go through like Kindles and stuff and he'd have hundreds of books on these things, and I just couldn't grasp it and stuff. It's just something different about having that physical book in your hand, especially a hardback book. The thing I have about
it's another market, and there are people who now have stopped buying physical books because they don't have the space. They'll buy the digital ones. So obviously it makes sense to do that. But I do have a couple of books or short stories which only exist in a digital format, and I can't put them on my writing shelf, which drives me mad because it means it's incomplete.
I really like the fact that the apps, like especially the Tin Man Games apps, kind of put all that number crunching under the hood.
Yes.
And just leave you the kind of fact of just to keep track of your stamina, strength, and luck.
Yeah.
And they do the dice rolling for you automatically. It's just a lovely little kind of
I think that's a definite advantage. And certainly something like Ronin 47 is probably the one with the most complicated rules, because the mech combat is far more complicated than normal combat, because you have ranged and close combat, and then distance comes into play, and you got armor. So it's more complicated than your typical fighting fantasy book in that respect. But partly because of that, and because I know there are people who cheat. I used to write game books when I first started out, people trying to beat the cheaters because I cheated. So I thought, I'm going to catch these people out. But forgetting that if they're cheating, well, that's up to them. They bought the book. but it probably means they're enjoying the story and they want to know what happens next. So I now make it explicit in the rules. Well, I try and make it fair to begin with. So if you play fairly, I'm playing fair to those people. But I do actually say, if you want to ignore the dice rolls and everything else, you win every battle, you pass every attribute test, that's fine. But you still might not complete the adventure the first time, depending on the choices you make.
Interesting.
I remember in City in Levenstone's Blood Zombie, it's actually set up where even if they did the five-finger bookmark rule, you could set you up where you would lose. Right, putting the traps and the text by, you'd go through so many different sections and realize you'd gone 6 or 7 sections, lost track of where you were, and you just couldn't get out of it.
Yeah, in that one you had to kill every zombie as well, so you could get through to the end alive. But if you hadn't killed every zombie in the castle, you failed.
Yeah,
so that was hardcore.
That was a very hardcore. But he deliberately. I mean, Levenstone's books have always been challenging compared to Steve Jackson's, I find.
I think they both. I mean, Creature of Havoc was pretty challenging.
Actually, and thinking about it, so was the Starship one.
Starship Traveler, and also, but people like the early ones I wrote are hard to the point of being impossible. Unfortunately, play testing wasn't as rigorous as it was now. I'm lucky in that, partly doing because I've done it through crowdfunding, but there is a team of people around me. Although I'm the creator and the producer, I've got different artists, I've got editors, I've got proofreaders, and I've got a brilliant team of play testers. So, they are gone through rigorously to try and eliminate any errors like that to make it fair. But certainly when I was writing for Puffin, it didn't have quite the same number of people with eyes on it in the same way, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I find writing is, seen as being a solitary activity. And in some ways it is, but also there's a lot of people behind the writer, as you say, like there's the writer, there's the editor and the play testers.
Yeah, I mean, there'll be moments where most of the time I sit by myself at my desk in the morning, and then you go to something like UK Games Expo, and the guy who does my graphic design came up and said hello, and you see editors and artists and people who've read the book and enjoy them, and you're just surrounded by people suddenly immersed in it. You see hundreds, if not thousands, of people over the weekend. So yeah, it goes from those two extremes.
Yeah. I mean, and actually, you brought up UK Games Expo. How did you find it? I mean, this was very much a back to normalcy for.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, it's always my favourite event of the year for all sorts of reasons. Partly big part of it is the social side. And also I find that my game books sell much better at gaming events than they do at book events. So that's always nice. But I hadn't been since 2019 because obviously it didn't happen in 2020, or rather it went online. And then 2021, they kept moving the dates and it clashed. So I couldn't attend. So I'd really missed it. And I had a great time. It's kind of all I hoped it would be.
Excellent. Yeah.
Okay. Probably gonna have to sort of start wrapping up soon because I've got to go soon. But what we kind of do in our podcasts at the end now is we do sort of kind of a name the character sort of kind of thing. So you get 60 seconds. So we name a franchise, and obviously you got to think of one to sort of do for us. But you name a franchise that preferably somebody's going to understand and know about and stuff. So not something obscure and just going to go, I don't understand. I don't know, like Star Wars or Warhammer or something like that. Everybody sort of has some sort of knowledge about. You name it. They've got to name a character, and then we've got to guess it. And you've got to ask them questions. You're going to guess it. So, if you can think of one, a franchise, fire away.
Okay.
So think of a character from a franchise. Obviously, a franchise you think we may sort of.
The first one that sprang to mind is probably too easy. That's the trouble. Oh no, I'll go with it anyway. Oh well, no, it's one of those things where you probably. I'd say the franchise, and you pick one of two to guess to begin with, and one would be the right answer. Trying to think now. But...
Okay, well, I'll do one then. So, you're obviously having written for Warhammer. Right? Your Warhammer knowledge is sort of, what are you more 40k or fantasy?
Oh goodness! I mean, to be honest, it's not what it was, and certainly Age of Sigmar's
I wouldn't do Age of Sigmar. It would be if it was all,
Maybe I'll say 40k. Might get unstuck now.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Okay. So, Warhammer 40k. Right, so basically, I'll say Warhammer 40k, 60 seconds,
Okay.
go, and then you just ask questions, yes or no questions, or about it. And then we'll see what happens. So, Warhammer 40k, 60 seconds, go.
So is he a space marine?
He is a space marine.
Is he a blood angel?
He is not a blood angel.
He's not an angel. Is he? Oh, he's not beyond the fell-handed, is he?
It is not
As we
pure
just mentioned.
fell-handed. No, I lie. He is not technically a space marine. No, he's not a space marine.
Oh, is he one of Chaos?
He's not Chaos, no.
Is he a dreadnought?
He is not a dreadnought.
He's not a space marine.
Is he a former space?
He's not a space marine.
Oh,
yeah.
Is
not
he a
space marine.
Primarch?
He is not
Is
a
he a
Primarch.
Primarch?
He is not a Primarch.
Oh,
and
but
the
it's something
Imperial
to do with
Guard.
space marines.
Say it again.
Is a part of the Imperial Guard,
He's not part of the Imperial Guard.
but he's
But he is. He fights for the Imperium.
He fights for the Imperium, yes. A clue. He's Horus Heresy era.
the Inquisitor.
He's not an Inquisitor.
Oh dear.
Okay, so
60 seconds must be running out.
Yeah, so you got one more question, and then you're gonna have a guess. I'll give you a clue. He is a member, and I'll not tell you what they are because I'm assuming they're a member of the 10,000, the Custodian Guard. I'll say that it's part of the Custodian Guard.
Oh, Valdor.
Yes, Constantine Valdor.
Only because you said that. Right, okay. Apologies.
Okay, no problem at all. Pete, give us one.
Star Wars.
Oh yeah, Star Wars. Okay. So Star Wars, 60 seconds. Go. Original trilogy.
Pardon?
Original trilogy.
Yes.
The Dark Side.
No.
Oh.
Imperial. Sorry, Rebel then.
Yes.
Jedi.
No.
Leia. Is it Leia?
Yes.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah.
As soon as she kind of started going to me, it's got to be Leia.
She wasn't a Jedi. She's more sensitive.
Yes.
But she's not full on Jedi.
Yeah.
That was sort of hence the hesitation.
Though I think in some of the older books and stuff, she did become one. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
like the ones that aren't canon anymore.
They aren't canon.
Yeah.
They're supposed to expanded universe.
30 seconds. Pow. Yeah. All right.
Well, I've got one now if you want to do it.
Yeah. Okay. So what is your franchise?
Well, it kind of narrows it down slightly, but Batman.
Okay, so Batman, 60 seconds, go. So we talking comics or films?
Comics.
Comics.
Are they one of the bad guys or good guys?
Bad guys.
Okay.
Do they have any?
Are there any good guys?
Yeah.
Are they the Penguin?
No.
Are they Bane?
No.
Are they one of the ringleaders?
No.
Oh.
Are they a main villain?
I'd say yes.
Are they in any of the films?
I don't think. Oh, no, hang on. I think maybe there is. Oh, no. I'm thinking of the TV series. I don't think they're in the films, no.
But they're in the TV series?
I think there might have been a reference to one, but I didn't watch Gotham all the way to the end, so I'm pretty sure they mentioned it.
Are they male or female?
All right.
Male.
Right. Okay. So one more question.
Sorry, what was
Do they have any powers?
Yes.
Okay.
So male, bad guy, potentially named in the series.
I hope that's right.
So potentially named bad guy, if male.
Do you want a clue?
Yeah, go on. Then give us a clue.
Also appeared in the computer games.
It's
quite-
It's gonna.
Quite a major role in one of the computer games.
Arkham Knight. What's his name?
No.
Red Red Hood.
No,
No.
because he's not a bad guy, not the hero.
Oh.
Okay, who is it then?
Clayface.
God damn it. Right, very good. Very good. Very good. Okay, we'll do one more. So I've got a few more TikTok videos I can add on.
I've got one ready.
Okay, go on then.
Marvel.
Okay, Marvel, 60 seconds. Go.
Male or female?
Male.
Powers?
Pardon?
Powers?
No.
Female, no powers. Have they got a film?
Male.
No.
They don't have a film.
Nope.
They don't have powers, and it's female.
No, male.
Male. It's male. Okay.
J. Jonah Jameson.
Nope.
Are they a superhero?
Yes.
Ah.
Don't have powers. Marvel don't have powers. Don't have a film. Do they have a TV series?
No.
Oh. Who's got?
So not a film, not a TV series. So
The Punisher. Oh no, he's got
loads of films.
Yeah, that's rubbish. That won't be him.
So,
Nick Fury.
Nope.
Oh.
And they don't have powers. Ah, fuck.
Is he a good guy? Did we do that one?
Mostly.
Mostly.
So he's an anti-hero then. Okay, right. Start. Okay, one more guess.
Do he work for Shield?
Every now and then.
Oh.
God, no, it's not gonna be Deadpool because he's got powers.
And then some.
Yeah. Ah, fuck. This is gonna be something really obvious, isn't it? It's gonna frustrate me. Give us a clue, man. Go on, give us a clue.
They have the super soldier serum.
Is it Bucky?
You're very close.
Is it the Winter Soldier?
Oh.
No.
What's his US agent?
No.
Oh, who is it?
Nomad. Jack Monroe.
Right.
You complained to me last time that I was being too obvious.
I know, but that was like really obscure. Yeah. Okay. Good one. Nice one, man. Stomped on all of them. God damn it. Okay. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much,
thank you for having
Jonathan.
me.
Apologies, can't go on for much longer. Unfortunately, time has run out for me. But it's appreciated. Have you got anything that you want to pimp out at this moment in time?
Yes. We've got to celebrate 40 years of the Warlock of Fartuck Mountain. We're having Fighting Fantasy Fest 4 on Saturday, the 3rd of September. It's taking place at the University of West London in Ealing. So tickets are on sale now. So come along. Meet your heroes, meet the artists, authors. There's a film screening, there'll be panels, there'll be a painting demonstration, gaming sessions going on, traders, all sorts.
Brilliant. Well,
excellent.
That's great. For tonight, I've been Matt Geary. With me has been Peter Ellison.
Good night, everyone.
And Jonathan Green.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Night.
Bye.